Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for your patience, those of you who stood around. Thanks to those who acted for the whole great. So, public question time. We have 15 minutes of public question time. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak, or have we any councillors like to speak as a member of the public? Councillor Carrier?
You want me to do it for me? Yeah.
Wherever you
Well, it's only really a... Thank you, Chair. Sorry. The thing I just wanted to make councillors aware of is obviously in the conflict in the Ukraine regions, and we're seeing a lot of interest in that internationally and locally. What's happening locally, we've got two organisations now, at least, that are emerging. Both came out of Facebook pages, effectively. But they're already connecting with quite a lot of people. So I've been in conversations. This is where in my job as basically I'm paid now 12 hours a week to support voluntary sector groups and emerging groups. And so as part of that, I was asked to help out a woman who actually happens to live up the road from me, who was wanting to set up a resource centre where people could get clean, new linen and bedding and clothes for people that are arriving with very little. So from that, I basically started to speak to various people, including people in the council. But there's basically a whole new team emerging that's helping people with visa applications. You might remember the government decided not to do the matches for people who are coming to Britain, and it said it will ask the charity sector to do that. So basically various charities and groups are trying to find Ukrainian families and trying to match them to people in England or Britain who are offering their houses. So once they're matched, then they've got to go through a visa process, which is a 50-page process in English, and most of these people are Ukrainian living in towns in Poland. So it's a very difficult process, so they're helping with those as well. So basically, a Ukrainian woman in Holme sort of inspired this local group called Home Valley Homes for Ukrainians, and they're up and running. I'm liaising with the council with them, and we've got meetings lined up. There's various meetings happening within the council because, as Kirklees councils will know, we're working with Kirklees Together, which is a refugee support school. So basically, I'm trying to link everything up. And there's another project that's just emerged in Holme called Holme and Home Valley Homes for Ukrainians, which sounds very similar to the other project and is very similar to the other project. But what I'm just wanting to flag really is that things are happening. I imagine as things pan out, there may be quite a few families here, and some of them may need money for projects, for social projects and other things. We hope the council will pick up some of the costs around the welfare things, but there's quite a lot of other soft support that we need. So really, it's just a call out to the parish to say I hope that the parish will support the endeavours of these people who are looking to support people coming from the Ukraine, and to be honest, people who are coming from other war-torn regions across the globe, really, because it's not just Ukraine. There's quite a lot of other communities that have been that live wars and conflicts around the place. So they're a fantastic group. It's all very early days. We're trying to tie things together. Once I know more formally, and I know when there's addresses and emails, and I'll share it with the parish. But just to say that's something that I'm on with personally, but it's not my effort. This is another group of people that are just organising. But I'm really very, very moved actually how the commitment they're showing. And it's really difficult. We sat in a meeting with somebody and we spent the afternoon in the Ukrainian centre finding body armour for the brother who's fighting in Ukraine. And then they're on the phone trying to help people get to this country that they've never even met. And it's very, very difficult work they're doing at the moment. That's it, Jeff.
Do we have any other councillors who would like to speak in the public? Okay, thank you for that. Before we move on to the meeting proper, I would just like to ask if those councillors who would like to stand for a moment of silence for for all those who have recently lost their lives in conflicts all around the world, or enduring conflict, around the world. So I'd like to consider being silent tonight. Thank you very much. Item 21.2.119, bodies additional meetings at 1960 amended by the Office of Local Government Bodies Regulation 2014. Both Parish Council meetings can be recorded with the chairman to check if anybody wishes to record a meeting. Anybody? Okay. The officer present will record the meeting in audio format for upload to the Parish Council's YouTube channel. Apologies for the leave of absence. We've received 4 apologies that have been circulated for the meeting. I'll see that. Is that right?
Chair, can I just say we've had apologies from Councillor Roberts received by email, but since I've been here and not in the office, so we've had apologies for her as well, having mobility issues.
I believe that Councillor Roberts has also asked for she has current dispensation regarding attending council meetings due to health reasons, and she's requested we can extend that dispensation.
Can I propose up to June, please?
Yeah, and second that. Thank you. All those in favour? We wish Councillor Roberts speedy recovery and much also. Thank you. Join us again. Okay, item 21.22.121.
Mr. Chairman, could we just have note of the councillors who are absent but haven't sent apologies, please?
Councillor Paul Dixon. Councillor Joe Sweeney.
Thank you.
Yeah, item 21.22.21. Members interested in the items on the agenda and consider any written request for DPI dispensations. Any new DPIs received?
None received. Can I just put a reminder to all councillors that as your interests change, can you just make sure you are notifying us or refilling in the DPIs? And in fact, following this meeting, what I'll do is I'll send out a blank DPI to all councillors in case anyone needs to update.
All right, you can access your own currently on the website to check. Item 21.22.122. Consider offering interesting items on the agenda.
2122.132 staff performance.
Thank you. 2122.123 items on the agenda to discuss in private session. Although there's none, there are councillors here. This in private session will be redacted from the YouTube. I'm right to believe that it will be redacted from the YouTube. Councillor Perry?
Well, it relates to the situation with the request for the funding at Garside, and I'd want to know, we've discussed previously the financial situation of that particular shop, and I'd want to be assured that that was, that's not, I wouldn't really necessarily want to discuss in public the financial arrangements of a business that we happen to host at the moment.
So you'd be concerned around business sensitivity around a business like this?
Yeah, because there's an item about some money to invest in that building for a window for that business, and there's been a complicated history in regards to that business and paying the rent.
Okay. So I've got Councillor Perry's put forward that the item on the Garside building should be redacted from the item published on the thing. Has anyone got a second to that? Okay, can. So that's the one. Does anyone want to speak against that? So we're in favour? Okay. Is that okay with you? Okay, item 2122.124. The document of the full council meeting is dated 2122 number 212298 to 2122.118. The draft minutes of the full council have been circulated. I'm aware that Councillor Firth did send his apologies for that meeting. Unfortunately, there's not been attached to that minutes, and the minutes need updating.
Yeah, we received them by the phone, I think Councillor Surf after the message. So the apologies were received in time for the meeting, but not received by us because we were here rather than in the office. So yes, if we can consider making sure that the minutes are amended.
The minutes amended to actually reflect Councillor Surf's apologies. Is that okay with everybody? Item 2122, meeting minutes from Planning Committee, Publication, Communication Meeting, Service Provision Committee, Finance and Management Committee. Councillor Blacker, would you like to move the other two planning committees?
Yeah, can I ask the council to move the minutes to the planning committee meeting held on the 7th of February 2022, number 2122-181 to 2122-9197, which was already been included at the meeting of the planning committee on the 7th of March.
Is that okay with that?
It's to note.
No, it is to note. Yeah. To consider the draft minutes of the Publications and Communications Committee meeting 7th of February 2022, number 2122, /22126. Public comment?
Can I ask the council to accept the minutes of this meeting on the 7th of February 2022, number 212244 to 212268 inclusive?
Yeah, moving second or further. Thank you. Service Provision Committee. Is that you, Sean?
It is. Do you want me to,
I do.
okay. So, I'd like the full council to consider approving the release of up to £1,000 from the general
No,
reserve.
it is your head is out.
Is overscrolled.
Your head.
Sorry. So, I'd like the council to consider the draft minutes of the Service Provision Committee meeting 14th of February 2022, number 212230 to 212258 inclusive.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Thank you. Further. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to, that's the planning committee, isn't it?
Councillor Blacker again.
Why don't you do
Councillor Blacker.
Can I ask the council to approve the draft minutes of the meeting of the planning committee held on the 7th of March 2022, number 2122-198 to 2122-213.
Second. Further. Thank you. And Councillor Collins.
I'd like to ask full council to approve the minutes of the Finance and Management Committee meeting on the 14th of March, number 212283 to 212299.
Councillor Bugler, further. Okay, Finance and Management Committee, grant criteria. Item 2122-126, grant criteria and process review working party. The meeting on the 14th of March 2022, Finance and Management Committee discussed review of the grant system, its process, timings, criteria, application forms, supporting paperwork. The committee is on to ask council to establish a working group to review the system. Establishing a working group to review all aspects of the grant process. Would someone from Finance and Management Committee like to comment?
Well, the reason we wanted to do this is that we are increasingly getting very varied applications from people who want to provide nice little things for the valley. And at the moment, we are expecting them to increase. I mean, this less and less is coming from councils and from government, and that's likely to go on for at least a decade. And many of them are worthy, and they're very, very varied. So we were concerned that, you know, if we give to this little art group, do we have to give to every single art group? Or if we get and that we need to pull together our priorities to say, well, here are the 2 or 3 things that we're actually going to put at the top of the list for these, because there will be, and we are certain there will be a lot of them, and they'll all be things you want to give money to, practically. We also need to streamline the application procedures and update the forms and all the rest. We need, given that in the light of the number of applications we get, we need to consider whether we ask the public to come and make a presentation on every single one of them, which is really, really time consuming, and we carefully got rid of CASC so that we'd have fewer committee meetings, less work for our staff, and less to do for ourselves in theory. But some F&M meetings, and we've had one that went on to 11:15 because there were so many grant applications. So we need to look at ways. So we want, and we felt that, you know, while F&M could do this and come back with recommendations, it would actually make more sense to have a working group from the whole council to agree the way in which we want to streamline and our priorities for who we would be thinking about. That's the thing.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Anyone else like to?
Second.
Second that. Anyone like to discuss on that point? Councillor Rees?
Yeah, there was perhaps 2 other issues to raise in respect of the conservation grants. One was whether or not it would be more appropriate for some items of expenditure effectively to be moved from a grants environment across into service provision, regularised and normalised. So, for example, youth provision, where maybe a longer term funding arrangement might actually deliver better results rather than ad hoc grants. And that definitely needs input from full council. I think one of the other issues as well was where service provision had made a grant as well. So it was just about clarifying what's best dealt with where and making sure that it's coherent but not conflicting with the law.
Thank you. Councillor Parish?
Well, just to echo that, on the service provision, we're looking at the youth, what's classed as, there's a budget for youth grants, isn't there, for youth project support. And even that, I think it was unclear what we meant by youth and what the process really should be. So I think this is definitely needed. But my question really is, are you looking to get names for that working group tonight as well, if it's approved?
Yes,
yeah.
please.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay, so Councillor Holme.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think one of the things we mentioned as well was that it would be helpful if there were representatives, and I think we mentioned potentially the chairs of at least service provision and finance and management involved in that working group.
Yeah.
So that we made sure we had councils who represented 2 of the key areas where we do give out significant amounts of money.
Okay, so we have a proposal that we will form a working group from the councillors. The standing orders do allow us to bring in people outside of the Parish Council to a working group. Are we looking to include people from outside or not?
But F&M haven't considered it at this stage. It may be that along the line something will have cropped up.
Okay, I just thought we'd raise that matter, so we clear it out what we're talking about.
We're talking about councillors.
Working group made up of councillors. Councillor Holme.
Just on the matter that you just raised, we have committees and sometimes we call in external experts to enhance the expertise on a committee. This is a working group looking at a procedure for the district, and I think it should be kept within the realm of the people's elected representatives.
Elected representatives?
I.e. the councillors.
Councillors, okay, so we have a proposal and we have that seconded. So I think if we go to a vote and then we'll sort out who's going to that committee afterwards, we'll agree that we're going to have that working group. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, all in favour? That was the character sound. Okay, so the proposal is that the chair of F&M and the chair of service provision, is that right? Will be on that committee, they both will, on that working group. And then, how many others?
It doesn't have to be a lot.
My
Enough
experience
for
is-
we need enough people for the council to feel that they trust it's funding.
Well, so fine, is that come back to the full council, we will, you know, we will vote on it. But, it's not an executive work.
I mean, two or three others should be sufficient. That's big enough to share the burden and small enough to function efficiently.
Okay, so we could be from the other end then, from the other end of the house. Who would like to sit on such a committee? So we've got Councillor Blacker, Councillor Bellamy, Councillor Buster and Councillor Carrigan. Is there anybody else? So that gives us, is that 6 altogether?
Yeah.
Are we okay with that? Do we have someone who would like to come forward as a...
Can you propose those names for that committee, please?
Pardon?
Can I propose those names for the working committee, please?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that, sorry.
Yeah, just want to propose those names to go forward. Anyone second that?
Yeah.
All those in favour? Okay, so I will at this point, I'm going to go a little bit of executive power here. I'm going to appoint interim until that meeting meets first time. I'm going to ask Councillor Pat Collins to arrange that meeting, liaise with all those, if you're willing.
Yep.
And arrange when you're going to meet, where you're going to meet. And at that point you can organise your chair and structure that meeting and the members of that committee. Is that okay?
Yep.
Do we need to vote on that, or am I allowed to say that?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Moving on. Item 21, 22, 127, creation of an EMAG reserve of £2,017 for the 10th Holme Valley Scouts new mill. Would someone from F&M or the financial officer like to comment on that?
Yeah, I can do it. So the committee wanted to award £2,017 to the New Mill Scout Group, but the project was likely to be quite a long process, possibly taking a few years. Given that was the case, the committee didn't want to be giving over £2,000 of public money that would just be sitting in somebody else's bank account not being used, because we have to account for our grant money, as part of the audit process. So it was with that in mind, basically, that we would keep the money until they needed it. As soon as they need it, we would release it. But it was essentially to sort of safeguard public money that way.
Okay, sounds sensible to me. Does anyone want to comment on that?
Can we propose that?
Thank you, Councillor Brooke. Second there. Councillor Taylor. Okay, moving on to the Service Provision Committee. Item 2122, approval for payment from General Reserves for addition of a name to the Second World War Memorial. Would someone like to speak on this?
I think it speaks for itself.
Sure. On the 4th of February 2022, the Service Provision Committee considered the addition of a name to the Second World War Memorial in Holme Valley Memorial Hospital grounds. There are no funds in the 475 or War Memorial budget line. So Service Provision resolved to recommend the full council that steps are taken to add the name of Second Lieutenant Tom Burkhead of the 2/2nd 7th Battalion, Duke of Wellington's West Riding Regiment to the War Memorial at Holme Valley Memorial Hospital, with funding to be made available from General Reserve. The clerk is seeking approval for funds up to £1,000 from General Reserve for this work in progress. Once suitable quotation has been received, the clerk will report any quotations received to the chairman of the Service Provision Committee for the authorising work. Anyone like to speak on this, please?
Yeah. Where's the request come from?
Relatives of the person whose name is being added.
There are protocols around which memorials they go on. Have they been through that process?
I believe so, yes.
So where did Lieutenant Burkhead die?
I haven't got that information on me, but it did go through service provision.
It was sometime during 1940s something or other. He was He had been living in the Holme Valley before that happened.
Councillor Dalton and then Councillor Holme.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if the gentleman served was from the locale and died in the Second World War and he's been omitted through some form of error, then I'm happy to go ahead with this, but I think, as Councillor Greaves pointed out, who's asked, if it's the family, if it's come from the family, I'm not too sure whether that is, you know, I'd certainly like to see what backup information and involvement there is from the Armed Services records on the matter, rather than just assenting to something from a family request.
Sorry, was some research information supplied with the sort of papers for that particular committee?
So that has been supplied to you, shown in the committee? Right.
It has.
Okay.
Councillor Holme.
Yes, I was working on a civil line with regard to trying to remember in the past whether we have actually added anything onto the wall memorial. I know certainly at one stage we re-lettered something with the gold lettering. And I believe because that war memorial isn't our property, we had to apply for permission to do it.
That's correct. We go through the official war memorial channel.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
For myself, the right goes through the channels and that, yeah, I'm more reassured that it is a request that's come from his family. You know, and I know we did have someone come through the programme where they just put a list of names of people they believe should be on with no contact with their family. I wasn't very happy that I just sticking someone's name on it without their relatives being aware. But as this has come through the family, and provided in all the things that
There was plenty of information provided with the request, but it's a while ago, so I can't quite remember what the details were.
I've just googled them, it looks about right.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. It also proposal.
I did want to make another comment. It was to do with the value. Again, £1,000 looks a lot of money for adding a name onto a memorial. Can we, I mean, earmarking a budget up to whatever, but £1,000 is a lot of money to have a name put on a memorial.
Can I speak?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I've chosen that figure £1,000 because that, in terms of our financial regs, is how much I would normally be authorised to spend up to. I honestly cannot say how much I think it's going to cost. I've only sort of got a vague awareness of what it costs to have my parents' gravestone re-lettered. That's my only experience of this kind. And it will go through the official war memorials channel. So what I would say is that I'm quite happy to... What I wanted to do was make sure that we've got some authorisation here and putting money into the right, from general reserves, into the right budget line, so that the whole affair can be progressed. It may well be that you want to sort of give back to service provision on the 13th of June, sort of sign off on the quotations and so forth. That makes sense.
Might I suggest we approve in principle the process if it's an amount within the clerk's authority, then she can crack on and the bill will be what it is within her authority.
So it says that we want to earmark £1,000 for it, find out what it's going to cost, and then go that'll come to service provision.
Yeah.
And they can either give it a nod or not. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I suspect there may be bespoke teams, because obviously the artwork, they want to be consistent, and I suspect they might say, yes, it can be done, but you've got to use our guide kind of thing.
Son of Percy and Anne Catherine Mary Birkenhead of Romford. There you go. Died age 19. 7th of June 1940.
Okay. So that sounds like we've we have someone who knows that.
Yeah.
Sure. All those in favour? Thank you. Happy Day 322 to 4700 CCTV. Do you want to speak on this, Sean?
Well, I guess it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? It's that we have fund or helped to fund CCTV in Holme before, and we've discussed some issues with a previous CCTV camera that was CCTV system that was obsolete, and the CCTV system that I've got in Holme seems to have been quite effective in kind of reducing or preventing crime. And I think the Business Association who came to speak to us when they made the grant application were able to give several examples of when the CCTV system had been useful. So I've asked the full council to consider the environment of 1,500 from EMR 322 to 4700 CCTV for the funding of CCTV in Holme Centre managed by the Business Association, and to approve the payment of that amount to Holme Business Association.
I'll second that. Okay, so what were the actual grant of the certain provisions could do that here because they're certain provisions, but what you're saying is you want the money to be taken out of the amount reserved and by the cost to the committee. Am I right in that?
Yeah, you are.
Well, it's not a violent, but yes, in principle.
Okay, do we all understand where the money's coming from, where it's going? Yeah. Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder, all those in favour? Okay. Item 2122-131, request for environment to 387,000 to 50 line 4705 to the youth facilities 4755 to support a grant application from Kirklees Youth Alliance. Let's speak on this.
Well, this is basically about Kirklees Youth Alliance applied for £5,000 on behalf of to fund youth clubs at the Phoenix Centre, and there were quite a few applications at the time for requests for grants out of that budget, the youth facilities budget, and we felt in the committee that we should try to give them the full 5,000. So that's why we're asking the full council to approve a payment of £387 from budget line 4705 to budget line 4755, and a total payment of £5,000 to the Kirklees Youth Alliance.
So my understanding is that you thought this grant was worthy of the full amount of £5,000, however you didn't have £5,000 of the youth provision. But you were aware you had an underspend in the Christmas provision.
That's right,
Yeah?
Yeah.
And which will
Make it up to
which if isn't spent, and we're not having a Christmas between now and the financial year, if that's not spent, that'll just go back into general reserves. So you're looking at you want to via that from rather than you go back to general reserves, you want to via that across so you can utilise it for the for the youth labs.
Yeah.
Okay, do we all understand?
Okay, second that.
Second that. Anyone else like to speak to that? All those in favour? Okay, 2122-132, staff performance. At the meeting of the 21st of March 2022, staff received various reports of staffing matters compared to staff performance in the development group. The committee noted that all staff are performing well and work has passed for the 6 months probation period. To note the report from the staffing committee on staff performance. Have you all seen that?
Noted.
Thank you. Noted.
More than you.
Okay, item 2122-133, scheduled payments for March 2022. Approve the scheduled payments for March 2022 against document H. Have we all seen document H?
Yeah.
Are we all okay with document H? Yeah. John, Councillor Holme, all those in favour?
He's on iPad. It's,
212213 payment insurance premium. Consider payment of annual insurance premium for the Holme by the Parish Council Insurance Insurance of £1,790.54. Would you like to comment on that?
sorry, I was sorry, I was talking to Councillor Carey. Read it out to me again. Sorry.
The payment of insurance premium. Consider the payment of the annual insurance premium for the Holme by the Parish Council with the Zurich insurance of £1,790.
Yeah, this has changed. We probably can't approve this. Essentially, what's happened is that the trust got in contact with me about a week ago to say that their arrangements for their insurance have changed, and the knock-on effect of that is they've asked us to. Yes, the Civic Hall Community Trust.
Oh, right.
Sorry. So the knock-on effect of so basically they're sorting their own insurance for essentially the staff and various other things to do with their own insurance needs, but it's fallen back to us to the parish council to insure the hall itself, the building. They are going to pay us back. It's a bit convoluted, but it's essentially the wording of the lease says that the parish council has to lease the building, but we also have to ask them for a refund of that money. Obviously, I wasn't around when that was all set up, but that's the nature of the financial arrangement in the lease.
So, just to give my members of it, so they will pay for their liability insurance, which covers their activities there.
Yeah, that's right.
And going back, if I can cast my mind back to when this was all set up for the lease, because the building is owned by the parish council, they're running. The parish council in the lease decided that we would pay for the insurance, because then we would know that insurance had been paid. We were not relying on a third party to pay our building's insurance, but then we will claim that back from the trust.
Yeah.
So they would pay the money for it, but we would pay the insurance for the our building.
That's right. So the confusion came because when they arrange, because it's normally them who arrange the thing, and with what's their insurer called? But the problem was that they were the named person on their insurance, which would mean that we weren't fulfilling our lease. So it's come back very late in the day. Obviously, we're near the end of the financial year. So I've contacted Zurich, our insurers, last week, asked them to quote us basically for putting the Civic onto the actual building onto our schedule, and I'm waiting to hear back from them. Basically, obviously, we've got until Friday to get it sorted. I also put on a number of things that. The council did approve a list of additions and things removed from our schedule last year, but I think Liz possibly just forgot when it came to actually arranging the schedule. So there's a few things that didn't go on last year that I've talked to Zurich about this year that will go on, plus the phone box and so on and so forth. So. Like I say, I'm waiting to hear back from Zurich, and I will chase them in the next few days. So there's not really anything to decide in terms of the payment, because they're one of our regular list of payments. It just needs 2 signatures. It doesn't need approval of the council or a committee.
Okay, so this is not to know.
Well, when the agenda went out, this is all new information and over the last few days. So it's kind of discount the agenda item. I'm just informing you of where we are.
Okay, so ignore the agenda item, just like that. And you're going to reassure us all here that we will have insurance in place for the building.
Yes.
That's done.
Yeah, in future, is there worth in having this as an agenda item if it's a matter that can be resolved with a financial officer and 2 signatures?
Well, I mean, I think it's good that we have the opportunity to discuss it. It's got a bit messy because of things that are beyond our control, really. I think we would normally report it, you know, it would normally be reported to note.
Okay. So, we're not to approve on that, but it's noted. Thank you. Okay. Item 2.122.135, approval for payment from general reserves for the renovation of an adopted phone box. That's service provision? Please.
Thank you. So the adoption of the red phone kiosk adjacent to the post office in Hannaford has completed. The phone box is in need of renovation. A quote has been obtained for the repairs of £800. There's currently £293.50 in the 2021-22 budget line, full set and 3 5 for phone boxes, and indeed 400 in the 2022-23 budget. I wish to authorise the repairs with money coming from the 2021-22 general reserves. The money spent will exceed the £292 in the phone box budget line and will show as a deficit in the record. Now, this is an unexpected expenditure and therefore it was not budgeted for. And that's why I've come to ask for the money now.
Okay,
Yeah, I've got a question. When was the phone box adopted by the council? Do we know?
The adoption went through in December 2021. It's been quite a long process.
And the renovations, if I may ask, are we getting a nice 1960s style dial phone or a press button thing, or is there not going to be a phone in there at all?
There won't be a phone in
So
there,
it's
but
basically
phone's been removed.
windows and nice red bit of paint and what have you.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, is anyone else on the point? Anyone want to move that? Councillor Holme? Second. Councillor Dixon, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Item 2.122.136, where we've agreed that this will be in private session. The tenant of the outside building request that a window be constructed to move into the property. This would be part of the usual plan for work the first schedule to turn the property to a retail unit, but have not gone ahead. The quote for work has been obtained for £3,000. The quote has also been obtained for replacing the door in an attractive red colour of £200. The budget line 4325 for the gas side field in Western States has £503.53. To enable the work to be considered at June 2022, the clerk requests that the approval is given for a payment of up to £2,000 to be made available. The gas side field is from 325 for any work to be agreed. So, my understanding is that the first division is not decided to agree this. So in order to make a decision on it, there would need to be a budget there. Does that make any sense? Yeah? You can't really make a decision if there's no budget there. So we're agreeing to give them a budget and then we'll decide whether we're going to allow this to go forward or not. Councillor Carrier.
Yeah, the reason why I asked for this to be in private session, there's been, as people know in previous meetings, there's been issues around the ability of the people in that space to pay the rent, and there was various arrangements were made which seemed to be progressing. So I'm just checking actually that they're actually there paying what we'd asked for, everything's viable, and if they are, then yeah, I can't imagine working in that space without a window. It must be pretty grim, to be honest. So I don't not support it. I'm just checking there's actually a viable business in there that we want.
Yeah, they've paid every time to date, or in good time as well. I've not had to chase them at all.
Excellent.
Councillor Holme.
Thank you. Just one query with the old setup of the toilet and the alterations to it. Is it useful for us all to know just what in total we've actually spent over the last few years on that building?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I think we'll find it's come to quite a substantial amount of money now.
I think you're right, Councillor Gordon. It is all noted in the council's records. But the next financial management meeting or actual last building, would that be too difficult?
Yeah, well,
I can't
yeah.
talk about No, Councillor Brown,
Is
right.
it F&M or service provision?
It's service provision, yeah.
Can I ask that the...
Or is it?
It's reported to the appropriate committee how much monies have been spent on that building?
Yeah.
Is that all right with you?
Yeah, I can do that, yeah.
Respond to both.
Yeah. It is, yeah, I mean,
It appears that the tenant has requested that a window be constructed. I mean, surely we should assent to the tenant putting a window in as long as he gets the relative planning approval from us. But he can pay for it. What would we want to be paid for that for?
Councillor Dalton, Councillor Collins.
That window is something, before we had this tenant, when it was just an empty room, those of us who were involved in looking at it and whatnot agreed that it would be a far more lettable space if we put a window in. Because it was, certainly for a retail outlet, there is no way the public can look at it other than coming in. So we were all of the opinion it would be a good idea to put a window in anyway. This tenant said no, they were content with it. And so whilst they seem to be asking, it's actually in our interests, or we felt at the time that it's in our interest for it to have a window because it makes it easier to let.
But it's the tenant that's made a request to have the window, so presumably they want a window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, all I'm saying is there is an argument for us paying for it rather than them.
I'll bet there would be if I was sitting in the tenant's chair, but I'm sure their
Can we go through the
will-
chair and have a
Sorry.
chat? Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, originally we did plan to put the window in there, but like we also left it up in terms of the possible tenants as well, depending on who was going to move in there, they want to do what they want to do with how they want the space to be configured. At one point there was going to be a copy retailer taking over the shop, the space. This is before I think some of the correct council term, and they just wanted to put a small hatch in there. So having a whole window would have been absolutely pointless putting it in there at the time. But there's nothing. But for some people, having a big window in there would make it a lot better. Obviously, because you can see what's in there. So it depends on kind of who we're renting it to and what we want to do. So that's why I think we should refer it to the service provision, but provide the budget towards them, and the service provision consider it and go from there.
Councillor Dalton.
Yeah, I think Councillor Dixon's making a point. One tenant might want a hatch, another tenant might want a window, depending on what the business is. The current tenant's made a request for a window because he can see that the window will make the tenancy more lucrative for the tenant. So, like I said, we should allow them to crack on and fund the window at their expense.
That's not what I said, but anyway, I think we should refer it back to the service
No, I think
provision.
you suggested that it's a good job you didn't put a hatch in because that would have suited the copy retailer, but wouldn't suit a different kind of. And that's the point. You put a window in. What if this tenant gives the notice and all of a sudden you want somebody who wants a hatch in? Do we pay for it to be changed into a hatch? No, we let the tenants, let the businessmen pay for what they want to do.
From my experience of going around Home Firth and looking at most of the shops, most of them have got quite large windows in them, and most shops do generally have large windows in them to retail. So I think that most people would want a window in there like that, but like they might not do.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. We're over to Councillor Vice Speaker and Councillor Davis.
Yeah, very simply, let's refer it to the appropriate committee, which is the service committee, to make that decision, and that's where we should do it. Personally, certainly I would support putting the budget line there in order for them to make that decision. I would propose that.
I'll second that. So all those in favour? Okay, thank you for that. Okay, item 2122-137, internal audit. The Council is asked to consider the report on the internal audit and the recommendations action plan and document I. Two further specific matters arising from the recommendations require the Council's consideration. One is the recommendation that the pay date for staff is changed from the 15th to the 1st of the month. Whilst the reason behind this recommendation is sound, the clerk asks the Council takes into account that staff members already have direct debit set up around the 15th of the month pay date. Therefore, the clerk requested the Council resolve to continue with the 15th of the month pay point. Another recommendation concerns the collection, counting and banking of voluntary contributions to free from home and public toilets. The recommendation is that this becomes a task for the Deputy Clerk, RFO. Clerk notes that the current system whereby this task is completed by the contractor who supervises the toilets has worked to date. The benefits of moving to the recommendation are outweighed by the time constraints posted by the Deputy Clerk, RFO, taking on this task. Would anyone like to comment? Councillor Dalton.
Yeah, I mean, if we're happy paying the staff on the 15th of the month, and to change that date would mess them around. Why the heck are we changing it? I'm not too sure why that such a recommendation would come. Presumably there's some reason, but I don't want to get into that. So I'm quite happy for the matter to be dealt with as our staff members have suggested. And as for the matter of the collection and counting, that's really an issue of risk. That's why the recommendations come in. They're saying, no, you can't trust X, Y, Z. You've got to put the trust in. Again, if we feel that the system that is working is not broken, then don't fix it, is my view.
Any other comments? I would just like to say that I think if we change the day which our staff get paid on, we will be changing their terms and conditions, and so we'll have to go to consultation. I think forcing them to change their terms and conditions when actually they don't particularly want to, if they, they're quite happy to get continuing payment if they see no reason to change it, but I think we can note that matters for the reasons Councillor Dalton said. And again, I think if we were, my personal opinion is that if we were entering into an agreement with a new tender who was looking after the toilets, we may want to revisit this about them collecting the money and dealing with it, but over the long years we've built up a level of trust with the current person who's in that role and see no reason to change. So, consider approval of continuing with the 15th of the month pay date for employees and request of employees. I'll put that forward. Have you got a seconder? All in favour? Okay, and let's consider approval of continuing the current system for collection of counting and banking public toilets for which contributions. I would amend that to say, well, ever the current tender with the current company and review that if we have a change.
Yeah.
Is that okay with that? But a seconder for that? Is it favour? Cheers, thank you very much. 2122138. Oh, sorry, I think it's clear to amend financial regulations in light of the report and decisions taken to the next full council meeting.
So, sorry, Chair, we've also got to approve the interim internal audit report and action plan.
Oh, sorry, yes, I missed that one. So I'll put forward that we approve the interim internal audit and action plan. Has everybody seen it and read it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll put it forward. Anyone second that? Councillor Collins, all those in favour? Very much. Internal control check. Council members carried out the internal control check required as part of the internal audit. This needs noting, and the council volunteers sought to carry out the checks in 2022. So we'll note that that's been carried out by Councillor Holme. Is that all right? Yep, noted. And then to consider nomination of the council to complete the internal control checks for the financial year 2022-2023. Would you prepare to do it again next year, Councillor Holme?
I'd rather another councillor did it.
Okay, that's fine.
I only stepped in at the last minute because I'm sure.
My fault. I was supposed to do it when I was away, so I'll take it next year.
Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much.
Have we got a second for that? All in favour? No. Thank you. Okay, 2122139, fixed asset register and risk assessment. K2 was presented. Any change required within the action of the clerk? Anything to report there?
I know there's a lot to go through in that risk assessment, which I'm aware of, just to make sure that we haven't got any slippage in some of the dates in.
Is there a look at that? Comments,
Chair,
Councillor?
sorry, can I just comment on the fixed asset list?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just conscious some of the notes are perhaps out of date. There's only some comments about printer owned by SSB. I wouldn't have thought that's still the case.
Well, it is. It is hers. It's still in the office. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right, fair enough. Right. I stand correct. Sorry.
You still use that printer?
Well, until fairly recently, we have. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, do we approve? Everyone move that? I'll move that we approve that. Anyone second that? Councillor Hogwell, all in favour? Thank you. Item 212214, approval of expenditure of 10,000 from budget line 4615, Royal Enactment Events 2022-23. Would Councillor Hogwell like to report?
Well, this is for the Jubilee, Queen's Jubilee Wildflower and Tree Project that I brought to full council end of last year. This is just to ask for approval of the budget to be, the budget's already approved for £10,000, but it's to allow the purchase of the things itemised within that £10,000. So it's the purchase of the B bonds and resources to take to local primary schools. The intention is to, and secondary schools. The intention is for that to happen in May time. I'm conscious of the moving into the new financial year. It's just making sure I spoke to the RFO about it to make sure there was the authorisation with which to purchase the materials to then go to the schools to provide the children with the B bonds. So we've already approved the principle of the money. I don't know, is there anything, Rich, you want to add?
Well, it's the distinction between expenditure and payment. What we're basically doing here is authorising the expenditure of up to £10,000. Payment would still have to be arranged at Finance and Management or Council. So this is not about the actual payment of actual cash money. This is about agreeing to spend the money.
Thank you. Just one query, please, on this one. Have we explored the possibility of any money from District Council, i.e. from Kirklees, with regard to what we and obviously the parishes and town councillors in the area will do? Is there a pot of money available for us to dip into?
Not that I'm aware of. This is the money that we agreed for that the parish council would spend on this project.
And any local council today for anything? Any of the budget there that occurred, please, that you're aware of? That's a no, so no one's aware of the budget. Sorry.
The year that, Donald. The year that. No. May I, Councillor?
Please do, Councillor Donald.
The Chairman's asking whether Kirklees have got a budget in for the Jubilee events and whether any of that's going to be shipped down to the Holme Valley.
Well, I can't tell you that. We aren't really council. I think Council Derris will tell us something about that.
Councillor Davis, you already come to this,
There will obviously be discussions, and there are discussions around the events team for the Jubilee, but certainly I'm not aware of there being a particular plan to move money out to parish councils or town councils, because I think, as is already explained, the parish and town councils will be making their own arrangements for their own budget. So certainly there will be expenditure by Kirklees Council across Kirklees for the celebrations. But that's as far as I know at this point. If you want me to look into it further, I will do, but certainly that would be my view, that the parish and town councils would be funding their own particular activities, and then in addition to that there will also be other activities obviously funding and supporting that activity.
Councillor Carey.
I think councillors need to remember this is a parish-led initiative that we've already approved and allocated that fund for, and we need to continue to support whatever bureaucratic processes we need to do in order for that money to flow
because it's now March and this needs to happen very quickly to be in place by June. So I fully support whatever things we need to support to enable us to prove what we've already approved, effectively. Don't know why we're discussing it.
So can I propose we authorise the expenditure of up to £10,000 for the GP project?
Can I second that? All those in favour?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, item 212 to 141. Referral from Kirkland Monitoring Officer regarding Council Hitch. Holme, Parish Council received from Kirkland Monitoring Officer regarding complaints from the public made by Council Dalton. Holme Parish Council is asked to consider applying the sanctions A to G below. Subsequent to this, the clerk received on the 31st of the 1st, 2022 information from Council Dalton relating to 8 subsections B which will be shared with the Council. This is now included. Has everybody seen the report from Kirkland Council?
Yep.
Has everybody seen the further information provided by Councillor Dalton?
Yeah.
Okay.
Point of order, Mr.
Councillor
Chairman.
Dalton?
Can I just clarify? There's 7 items to consider here. The standing order allows councillors to speak for 2 minutes. Is that 2 minutes going to be for each of these considerations, or is it for the whole agenda item?
Would you like to speak for 2 minutes on each item?
No.
Would any of the council like to speak for 2 minutes on each item?
I was just wanting a clarification. From
I
you,
will
Mr.
let
Chairman.
someone speak for 2 minutes on each item if that's what they wish. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone like to speak to any of the items?
I'd like to talk actually about the Twitter handle.
Yeah, council item C.
Yeah, Councillor Dalton being called a councillor on Twitter.
Yeah, go ahead. Have your 2 minutes.
So, when I read this, Councillor Dalton, I was very, very shocked at what you'd written on Twitter.
Could you make it clear what you were shocked about, please, so we know?
Well, the words were so vile.
No, it would be nice to know.
Councillor Dalton, can we allow the councillor to speak? If you want your 2 minutes to reply afterwards, I'll let you have your 2 minutes to reply. Thank you.
Right. I'd like to ask you, Councillor Dalton, have you ever been raped?
Councillor Shear, I'm quite happy for you to address the chair and put forward your comments.
Okay,
I'm not prepared for you to interrogate a fellow councillor. Speak to the motion, please.
It's to do with his Twitter. Right, I just want to say, many girls and women and boys and men have in our community, and it unravels the mind, and it causes trauma, and you try and push this away in your subconscious, and you can lose confidence, and it takes many years to rebuild your psyche. Many people fall into addiction and can struggle throughout their life, suffering in silence. And your comments on Twitter referring to a young girl were so vile and misogynistic, I cannot repeat them. But to actually speak such words as a councillor...
I will give you the right to reply. Councillor Shear,
to actually speak such words as a councillor is an appalling misuse of power and authority. Rape happens in all communities and goes on throughout society, right up to the top, with those who hold status and power across all cultures. And I think your comments to the young girl on Twitter would put women off wanting to enter public political roles. And it creates a toxic atmosphere which, if it creates a toxic atmosphere that is not conducive to working together as a community. It crosses the boundaries of what we consider decent behaviour, and part of our humanity is recognising when we have made mistakes and apologising.
Thank you, Councillor Shear. Councillor Dalton, would you like to speak to that item?
No, I'll respond to those comments.
Have your 2 minutes. Please direct your comments to the chair and not to the...
Mr. Chairman, I will respond to the item agenda. I'm not going to respond to that diatribe of context-free comments from a Labour Party representative with the record that the Labour Party has on burying the rape of children and young women
He has his 2 minutes.
in our society.
He has his
Certainly
2
not
minutes, Councillor Collins.
going to
Please
take
give
any
his 2 minutes.
lectures from a member of the Rape Appeasement Party, the Labour Party. The comments that I would like to make with regard to the item is simply to reinforce the contents of my response to the monitoring officer and highlight my letter to the monitoring officer. When I am not acting in my role as a councillor, I will continue giving a hard time to the father of that particular young girl who was used and abused by their political activist parents and put into the public domain. And there was no communication with a child, there was a communication with a Twitter account run by an academic from Birmingham who happens to be, well, associated with the left, far left of British politics. But what I want to say is that the monitoring officer has no authority over what I do or do not say when I'm not acting in my role as a councillor. The Code of Conduct is absolutely crystal clear on what its limitations are. And it's absolutely clear that the monitoring officer and the politically motivated individuals associated with the...
Thank you, Councillor Boston. You've had your 2 minutes. Thank you very much for that. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dixon.
I'd like to propose that all 7 of the motions, my phone's just died so I can't read them out, all 7 of the sanctions and all the things that were recommended that we go ahead with them.
Okay, we've got a second to that.
I'd like to comment on the first consideration on the item agenda.
You have your 2 minutes.
Thank you. So the Code of Conduct is absolutely crystal clear that it's limited to when we act as councillors in our role as councillors. When I'm tweeting to far left activists promoting the importation of many more people into this country, which is not sustainable, as you should well know, then I'll continue to do so, and I'll do so robustly. I take it you, Mr. Chairman, I suspect that those who've read the highlighted information that has been pushed under the noses of the complaints monitoring officer, they understand full well where these complaints are coming from. They're coming from left-wing activists, and the process has been gone through. So I'll briefly touch on consideration number 1. You can consider this. You won't be getting an apology. You can demand it all you want. So that's my comments on consideration A. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Have got anyone else like to comment on anything there? We were at the point of Councillor Carey.
Well, just to say, I mean, a lot of people aren't speaking, I guess, because we just want to move this forward. I think I'm sure I speak for a lot of people when I'm just at a loss, really, as to why somebody stands for public office and thinks they can behave like they have. And it's unfortunate
Point
that
of
we've
order,
got...
Mr. Chairman,
it's
the
unfortunate...
person speaking in this council meeting who is not a member of this
Shut
council.
up.
Councillor Dalton, it's been spoken to a lot of time, and I refer you to the National Association of Local Councils.
Technical notes 6 and 7.
I think I've got full house now, Council Dalton, bingo.
Dash 1-4. Yeah, he is a parish councillor.
So I'm just, all I want to do...
Parish councillor, and I may remind you, when we did that co-opting, you spoke in favour of a different parish councillor being co-opted. You didn't speak against the process at that time. You didn't speak...
He is a co-opted
Yeah, he is co-opted, and you
yes.
spoke for another councillor. You didn't speak against the whole process there and said that, of course, this person is going to be a parish councillor. That was never mentioned at that time. I'd like to remind you, you were part of that meeting.
Indeed, Mr.
And you didn't vote, and you took on board that meeting, and then you changed your attitude after that meeting. You never ever spoke against that process and what a co-opted council could do. The matter is, I'm ready to discussion. Councillor Kelly, can you please carry on?
Yeah, this is just a simple point really, just to express my ongoing concern that this Councillor Dalton's still able to sit in public office. I mean, that I know we're up against the limits of what we can do. We've been through this process again, and no doubt we're going to have to go to it in the future. And if Dalton's re-elected, then maybe we'll be here every year going through a similar process. It sickens me. Your attitudes sicken me, and I'm going to fully support any sanctions we can take against this particular councillor. I wish he hasn't got any office or any platform whatsoever anywhere in Britain.
Councillor Mustard.
Just on point 4, where you Twitter handle as Councillor Dalton, would you consider removing the council?
I have no access to Twitter or my Twitter account.
You don't have a Twitter account anymore?
I haven't had access to it for 2
You
years.
got banned from Twitter for posting false news about the American election. That's what you got done for. You got banned.
Councillor Mustard has got
Sorry.
the floor.
So this is all historical stuff. You're not tweeting.
Yeah, if you read the letter, it took 450 days to actually process the complaint from these members of the public. So this is days.
From what I've looked at. But I'd just say this isn't an ongoing thing then. This is historical things that you've done, and you're not doing these things on Twitter or anymore.
I don't apologise for anything.
I'm not asking, I'm just asking factually that this isn't an ongoing thing. You're not.
I have no access to Twitter and haven't had for a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Councillor Dalton.
I'd like to speak to item B, C, D, E, F and G. Just go through them.
Okay.
B, a requirement for Councillor Dalton to apologise to Holme Valley Parish Council for bringing the council in disrepute. There's many councillors in this room who have brought this council into disrepute in many different ways. And those are matters which are being gone through with the monitoring officer, including complaints to specific councillors, which against specific councillors which haven't been dealt with appropriately, and we'll see how that pans out in due course. But the council won't be getting an apology from me for being for basically being targeted by a politicised group within the bureaucracy of Kirklees, adequately verbalised by Councillor Carey, who literally thinks that bureaucrats and employees should be in charge of who elected representatives are and not the voting public.
It's not what I said.
Item C, to consider a requirement for Councillor Dalton to delete. That Councillor Dalton doesn't have the ability to do that, but you can carry on and consider it and agree that a motion or a resolution that it should be done. Councillor D, a requirement Councillor Dalton to edit his Twitter again can't be done, not within my power. So you can vote it through if you so wish. It's not going to happen. E, consider reiterating the previous sanction requiring Councillor Dalton to attend diversity training. I don't know if that's a generic term or if it's to attend a specific course, but on item E, if the council politely requests that I go on such a course and will agree to cover my loss of earnings whilst attending such a course, then I may look upon that request favourably if the council wishes to sanction me and instruct me to attend a course. Well, we'll see what happens in that eventuality. Item F, formal censure. Yeah, whatever you want. And item G. Yeah, okay. I might actually vote for item G. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? So we've got moved that we'll take them all in. Councillor Hodley.
Chair, can I ask, I know that Councillor Dixon has proposed we implement A to F. A to G. I'd just propose, I'd make a counter proposal, which is that we approve A to F to avoid this becoming a regular feature of every full council meeting.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so
Oh,
we
yeah,
have,
I totally agree.
so we have an amendment that we will not look to count, we will not pursue item G.
Yeah.
Okay, so we vote the amendment first. All those in favour of that amendment? Thank you very much. And so then we are remaining, then the motion is that we consider and approve items A, B, C, D, E, and F. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's for your time. Item 2122-142, grant application from Holme Show. The council is asked to consider a grant application from Holme Show for £1,000 towards the cost of programmes. Can the clerk write it into the
Yeah, is it fair to call this a grant or is it on sponsorship of the event?
It's a grant. Last year it was a grant.
First of all, why did it come towards?
It's coming here because of the timings of it, as I understand it.
No, it wasn't. It was my misunderstanding. Basically, what happened was they sent me through the accounts, and on the accounts it was saying that they it had details of profit. Obviously, we're not allowed to give money to profit-making groups. So I queried this. So I tried to query this with them before the F&M grants meeting. Unfortunately, they didn't get back to me in time with an explanation. So it didn't happen at F&M. Since then, they've sent me information about the fact that it shouldn't really have said profit; it should have said surplus. They are a non-profit making organisation, so that's why it's come here rather than gone to F&M.
There is a supporting statement. We haven't got anyone coming to represent on the show, but there's a statement I can read out, please. So, this is from Julia Brown. As a representative of the Holme Show team, we enjoyed the increased link with HBPC last year and felt that mutual benefit was derived from the relationship. The Parish Council were very easy to deal with on both the programme and the new trophy for the handicraft section. In addition to your mention on the front page of the programme, we were able to give you numerous shout-outs on social media and coverage, including a photo on the home page of the website. You were very securely linked to the show in its 100th party year, and we'd love you to stay with us as we move into the next phase of our development, closer to home and usual.
Okay, so the motion's come to us. Would anyone like to comment on it? Councillor Don.
Yeah, last year I requested that we put the name of organisations down fully. It's Holme Show Limited. As I say, I'm very supportive of the Holme Show. It's a fantastic local event. It hasn't been held in the parish for some time since it was moved from Holme in the probably noughties when it moved up to Family Ties, but it's moving again as we're now advised, but it's still not in the parish. As I said last year, no, I don't think we should be providing £1,000 to a limited company that's got over 150 grand reserves in the bank. So I'll be fully supporting the Holme Show as ever, but I will be voting against this council giving them a £1,000 assistance from the public purse.
Okay, Councillor
I'm in danger of agreeing with somebody I oppose on virtually everything. The reason why we supported it last year, we were on the pub, I think it was on the Pubs and Comms Committee. We were looking at who was hitting landmarks, and we reached out to Holme Show and said, "You're coming up to 200th show. How can we support you?" I think that was the history of it. And the reason that we supported it was because it was a centenary programme and it was going to have more information in it. And it was also in COVID times, and they were doing a sort of step-down sort of show, which was very successful. I attended it with a Civic Hall stall. But I'd really struggled to give £1,000 of our funds to an organisation that sat on so much money for what is just yet another programme, when there's so many art festivals, film festivals, other people in the area that also produce programmes for their activities every year. So I don't really see what's exceptional about it. And they have got large reserves. I wish them every success with the move to Wiltshire, but it seems like a lot of money. We could probably buy a page or a half page in the programme as an advert for a few £100. It just seems excessive, and I think it was very different last year while we supported it, so that's why I wouldn't be looking to personally support it this year.
Yeah. The show did try to come back to, well, fully back to Holme. When it was up at Farmer Tyres, it's probably accurate to say that a very small part of the showground was in Holme. Probably the bottom end of the car park. They had looked at sites in and around Holme, but they opted for Australia Farm up at Wiltshire, which is where the Motorsports Festival was held. And that's not in the Parish area.
Bradshaw Road kind of is.
No, it's in Northern Town Council area. It's Australia Farm.
Yeah. The farm is.
Sorry, Chair. The fields on which the Holme show is going to be held in 2022 is in the district of Northern Town Council. It is not within the district of Holme Valley Parish Council. Fact.
Correct.
We did back on last year. The urban village was the centenary. To me, this isn't really appropriate grant. If we were going to do this, it really is more of a pros and cons issue, in terms of promoting the work of the council, and it would be for them to decide. But as a grant, I don't see the merits of it. And whilst it's got strong links to Holme and Northern Parish Council, and it's actually outside of the area, I'm not sure that will leave us anyway.
Okay, anybody else?
I'm not disagreeing with that, but to describe it as outside of the area is a technicality. It will be attended by the people of Holme. It is for Holme, and it will benefit Holme. The field happens to lie slightly outside, as did the field in Farmer Tyres, apart from a little bit. I don't disagree with what you're saying, however.
So, if I could just clarify, it wasn't a dig that it was outside the area. I'm really referring to the council's powers of spending money outside of the parish area, and it doesn't really matter whether that's on the other side of the road or 10 miles away. So I guess it'd be helpful for the deputy clerk to clarify whether or not there's actually the legal power to do it. But the event is being held outside of the area.
That's not relevant. I mean, all we've got to do is benefit some or all of the people of the Holme Valley. It's where it's held is almost irrelevant.
Have we anyone else who wants to comment? Councillor Davies.
Just very briefly, I think Councillor Carey makes sense, and also Councillor agrees. This is more the pros and cons. If we want to put something in the actual publicity as such, and pay for that, that's fine. If it's talking about the work of the council and giving our support, but I think what's been said does make sense in terms of it doesn't seem appropriate for the grant.
Okay, so the motion before us, consider the grant. I would like to say that take a vote on it, and we'll like to not to decide. But if it's in the negative, I would say we go back to the Holme show and ask them to go to the cons if they want to advertise in their programme. Yeah. Public cons can decide whether we do spend money outside in their programme or we don't. Yeah? Is that
Chair, can I just ask clarification when the next Public and Commons meeting is relative to the Holme show itself?
I didn't hear that.
Just asking when the date of the next Pubs and Commons meeting is, because clearly if it's after the show, that wouldn't be particularly helpful.
When's the show?
It's about June the 10th of the show.
No, it's
July
a bit later.
23rd.
Oh, really? Right.
23rd of May.
Oh, okay.
23rd of May for the next Pubs and Commons meeting, Councillor Dalton. I think it's you're right, 23rd of July for the actual show.
Put it later in the year.
Okay, so I've had a proposal. Have we had anyone for the proposal? If no proposal.
So can I propose we decline the awarding of the grant of £1,000, but feedback to Holme show that they should make submissions to publications and communications, not about a grant, but about potential sponsorship, advertising options.
All those in favour will go down that path? Thank you very much. To receive Chairman's report, the Chairman give a brief verbal report on the events attended on behalf of the Holme Parish Council. I was intending to attend the Great Burton Civic Sunday. Unfortunately, my mum was taken ill, so I was wrapped up with that, so unfortunately I didn't attend that. Other than that, I've attended no events on behalf of the Parish Council. I could get involved in January. Item 2122144, identify items for publicity arising from the work of the Home by the Parish Council. Is there anything anyone would like to put forward towards the public comment?
Community champions that we spoke about
I
earlier.
think we definitely have to put aside the community champions that would like to say the from and what have you. Anything else? I think nothing more than that, isn't it? No, I think we can put forward the community champions and what the fantastic people there. Okay, I'll bring this meeting to a close. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you all. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
So, Tom,
Yeah.
what time we got the hall till?
10 o'clock.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, there is
I need another one. Another one that's I have no idea what but obviously
Hi, Trevor.
I haven't spoken to you, I apologise.
That's okay, how are you?
All right.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Good. I've just something to ask you about the beacon thing up in Holme Village.
Right. I think it's going to be a fairly small affair, Trevor.
Right.
When you talk to the people at the Institute of Chartered Surveyors, they have got someone, they haven't said who, but they have got someone who's going to light
Thanks,
it.
Jen.
But I mean, they're talking about just having a dozen people up there, really.
Right.
So it's going to be fairly small scale.
Okay. And they're bringing the gas and the beacon or whatever.
They're doing all of it. Yeah.
Right, that's great. Oh, the reason I ask, the police in Holme Village, I've had a brief chat with her,
Right.
just to tell her what might or might not be happening, basically.
Yeah.
She has done in previous events of that nature. She's obviously had the pub and she's done complimentary coffee and things like that. If it was a really bad night and people didn't want to go there, they could stand outside the pub and look.
Yeah. Shall I give her a ring and have a chat to the people at the police and put them in touch with the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors who are organising the beacon and the lighting?
That might be very useful because we know what they sent through in writing, which was quite extensive, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Yeah.
Very, very well done, really. But,
yeah.
Right. So she's aware of the date and what may be happening.
Right.
That's as far as we've got.
Right, so I'll see if I can connect them.
Okay, that's absolutely fine, and I'll keep in touch with them on a regular basis. They have a village committee or whatever. Yeah. Shirley up at the police is leading light of. Yeah, she's leading light of the committee. Soon as she surprised the premises. She's a lovely lady.
I love the view. It's such a lovely pub.
Yes. Yeah, she's Amesbury.
Right, I will get in touch and see what I can sort out. And when I know any more, I'll let you know.
Champion.
Yeah?
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Quite lovely. Okay.
See you
It's
later.
turned chilly now, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's cool cold in here. I bet you're frozen there, aren't you?
My feet are cold. Yeah, definitely. So,
Let's get over.
right, lovely.
See you later.
Okay then.
See you later.
See you.
Lovely to see you both.
Yeah, thank you.
The other side is we need to know where it went.
Well, I've checked with every single scrap within a radius of about 20 miles.
It doesn't mean that it's still scrap, does it? Because they could have sold it to someone who's
Well, yeah, or they've taken the scrap and they haven't put it in. That's what I like, what's happened. My first really well. Well, later, it's not going to make any go because you get yourself into supervisor, which I didn't say. But I do think that the Olympic fails to found it, and I think when you speak to the guys he said, he said, no, he sent him all the plans. It cost over 50 grand. Yeah, it cost to maintain it. And they said, I'm retired. And he said, I'm telling you,
Offset their
when
work.
I wrote that up and I
That wasn't just stainless steel, it was the whole lot of it was stainless steel. Definitely all stainless steel.
it's gone somewhere, somebody found it. And it's annoying me, you know, when it's stored from the council. So I don't know what happened.
I don't know where to start.
No, I'm at a loss as well, because I got no help from them. Or I got threatened by it, because it brings you and you know, not long after the council, we took him for 4.5 years pulling down the list of buildings. But I got back onto enforcement law and I said to Kevin, have you made it all that? He should have been ready to put the bloody thing down. I would have done.
No, I agree.
So, you know, but I don't know what it is for you, but it annoys me if they got away with it.
You're right. If the point, you know, you're going to have to give them the top threats at the end, aren't you? They've got a lot of else they're not going to do. Unless you can find out where it's gone.
Well, he paid for the information. And he got his council copy, he got him to know. Why did you go, Mr. Up?
Yeah, stinks to me.
Bloody stinks. I have no idea.
Anyway, I think no rules say it needs to be cycled with, so we need to get a separate cycle lane, so rules should be achieved astronomical.
I have seen it.
Just for that, because we're going to do a footpath over transfers and cover just for that bit, and then you're back onto the road. And the bit before, when you're cycling down Kent, imagine everybody being up for on there. Can you imagine saying spend £100 on that? Yeah. 10 grand, 9,000 for a cycle path, to nowhere from nowhere. So that's why we're doing it. So we've actually got that distinguished, but we need to do this in other areas. But we need to get proper measures. I can measure them, but my measurements are good. Right? It's like me trying to do your job. Right? It's you that needs to sign it off. I can tell you, but I don't mean it. So I've looked at these and I've identified stretches of road where I think it's doable, but we have to do it. So the highways say this is 7.6 metres, which means it's more than 7.5 metres, which means you can do it. Right? And then we look at that. So we're supposed to be doing 2 jobs. That other job's not being told. But it's not happened either. It's part of another piece of work. So we're like, well, this isn't helping. Now, Andrew Perry was also asked to look at Heritage Bridge in conjunction with Matt Dale. Because
sorry, I disappeared at the moment.
It's all right. It's okay.
I should have drunk coffee halfway through. Thank you, Jen.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So I think I've just got another small one to do on a quarter of an hour report, and that's me done.
Yeah.
But we need to find a new chair.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Three people. I don't think he'd get well, he won't. It's part of the parish council. So
he's not been to one meeting.
So I've asked Council Firth, I've asked Council Greaves.
And then all that's done is
I'll send an email to.
And when they finally get into Holme, then they're going to substantive links within Holme, wherever it is they actually
suggestions.
For example, Church Street. So what's the logic of saying from Nether and Moore, you can't come down through that?
Can you can have councillors that have been chaired before, haven't you? But what about the chairs of the committees? So at the moment you've got Councillor Cullen, Councillor Blacker, Councillor Brooke, Councillor Hogley.
Somebody else has found to place. It wasn't us. It was not our area. No, of course.
I have no, I just like, if it's someone who comes, that's fine.
You want them here, don't you?
Yeah. Well, that was good. And I've learned a lot for next year about not having quite such a big gap.
I think you just do it that way, don't you? I mean, it's a trial run at the council meeting in May. The council have a quarter of an hour before for the extraordinary, if that's all right.
Yeah.
An extraordinary meeting to do that report.
Yeah. So the extraordinary meeting doesn't need to have a public question time or anything, does it? It just
has to go purely for the chairman's report.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, I do too. So I'll double check that that makes sense.
Tell you what I forgot to do. Venue for next meeting.
Oh, right. Well, what I will do is I'll email out anyway, and I'll say that I forgot to put it on, because there've been that many meetings, getting that agenda done, it went right to the.
Well, I think the thing is with what is it?
Yeah, I don't think we have done that yet.
It was minuted that we would agree.
Yeah.
There and what have you. So if you send an email out saying that it was decided that we would try and find somewhere else, I will still try and find somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then default come back to here if we can't find anywhere.
Yeah. Well, Councillor Carey sent me a really good list of alternatives, so I will try and find somewhere different for the 16th. So, yeah, and that, I thought it went really well, the award.
Oh, there was, wasn't there?
Yeah, really lovely.
Lovely. Some people got dressed up and all.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, for the annual parish next year, it will be in civic, and that'll be better because we'll organise refreshments properly and things. Yeah, all good.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
Oh, cheers.
It would help if you do chase it and copy of the document, but just say
we need an update. Could you please provide us an update with what's happening?
Yeah, okay.
Where we take it from there, but again, it was back to communication, but at least it's something we took back at. Last time I spoke to Mark, you were a bit like, it didn't end up, he was a little busted. He didn't want to comment on the motorsports thing.
Right, okay.
So they wanted to tell us.
Is Robert here?
I don't know, I don't think so, because he normally comes in, isn't he? But I'll go and have a quick look.
Wanted to direct us. But I think maybe it'd be helpful just to write out something. If you could do that this week, that'd be
Sure. Well, it'll be Monday. I'll put it to the committee on Monday, and it'll go out Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fine. But just
Yeah, I will do.
It's one of those. We were pretty much taken aback.
Yeah, that is weird.
Because at the point, I was asking for an update on what happened because the engineer had told me he was going out before he went on holiday. And then his boss's boss, the operational manager, came and said, support it. And we were like, what? You've not. you get how difficult it can be at times. It's just stuff like, how can you pull something that's been agreed without even letting us know or talking to us?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? If we were told, I mean, this is where I think the communication problems are worse than the decision making.
Yeah.
At least it would be respectful if you were told.
Oh, but what's the rationale for having pulled it?
No, I understand that. I understand that. But that's part of the communication. That's part of the communication, isn't it?
Yeah, but to actually not tell us and for us to only find out when we're asking for.
Well, you know, it's as if they're saying, well, you don't understand that we've got competing things that you know, because we know that, you know that, we all know that.
And that's what Paul White said. So Paul was normally placid, right, and he was getting proper wound up because he's a bit like, you talk to us like we don't understand that there's priorities.
But there's limited money in priorities, yeah.
And we exactly do, which is why we've put these forward with rationale time and time again.
Yeah.
You're also talking to us as if we've got no experience. Paul used to be a senior officer over at Tameside. So it's a bit like, it's that bit of, we haven't just climbed out of a box.
Yeah,
the day we
exactly.
were elected.
Well, you know, your average punter knows that things cost money and things compete and you've got priorities. It's not, you know.
So he was very much along the lines of, if there's a discussion, that's fine, we can have the discussion. But doing stuff like this and not even telling us,
explain to us why X is preferable to Y, and if we understand, we will understand.
Yeah.
And if we don't, we might not, but
I made the point as well,
point.
I'm getting piggy in the middle. So people are asking me, like, I can just make stuff happen, like Richard.
Well,
Russell.
Russell, yeah.
And I'm a bit like, and I'm saying what's been agreed. Now, none of it's happened. It looks like I've either been lying or I've not done my job properly, or it all comes back to me. It doesn't come back to the operational manager, Liz, going, oh, just because I don't like the sound of it, I've pulled it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and she's not posting letters out or going onto Facebook to say, no, I decided it's not. Do you know what I mean?
That's right. What's she called?
Liz Twitchett.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned her before. I know you spoke quite highly of her.
She knows the stuff.
Yeah.
But this is what I said when I spoke to the chief exec, because the chief exec used to be her line manager back in the day. Jackie Gedman came through from Highways. And when I spoke to Colin, I said, we completely understand that there's massive issues within Highways in terms of funding, priorities, never-ending demand, lack of officers. So there's as many calls for services as there were in years gone by. There's even less money to do them. Completely get now. And we understand there's priorities, but that's why it's important to discuss and agree. You can't have this unilateral action and then not even tell us.
Yeah.
What was good was Jackie was very much like, this shouldn't be happening. And then out of the blue I got a phone call from strategic director saying, Jackie's burned me ear about this, and this is what we're bringing Graham in to fix. Graham is very service orientated.
Okay.
So he's got a strong track record over at Wakefield, apparently. of helping manage these bits. So some of it is putting it in the mix about who can have, you know, you can't have everything, what's your priority? Once we've set the priorities, they're set.
Yeah,
you
and
know.
communicate.
Yeah, I can live with that.
Yeah.
I can live with that.
Yeah.
But the issue we've got at the moment with ours is we've got a backlog of works going back like 6 years. And it now appears to be that the explanation for nearly all our extended backlog is somebody unilaterally just pressing the fucking change my mind no button without communicating, which is why nearly everything, so the lights suddenly being turned on. Is this why no's been happening? Because she's just been like, nah. It's like, oh, do you have to agree? Do I have to agree with road sweeper as well? Do you know? I don't know how many staff there is at Kirklees, but do I have to get a sign off from every single one of them, or can any of them just wander along at any point and throw a spanner in works? I was being facetious with it, but do you know what I mean?
No.
It's just a bit like, does everybody get to decide whether a job's worth doing, or is it one of those where once we've once we've raised it? But I also stressed that whilst there's some unrealistic expectations from some residents, I actually think there's an easy fix for it. So if it's being pulled because there's concerns around cost and budget, can we have a conversation about that, if that's what it is? But at the moment, we don't really know why it's being pulled, other than she don't think it's relevant. But lots of us do.
Well, you're getting hassled by your parishioners, so you've got to have an explanation for them. It can't just be X has said no.
No, exactly. On what basis that there's other roads like that? Well, then what makes a road stand apart? You know. And I said it can't all be about accidents, right? It's because we do works not just because of injuries, but because of congestion. Otherwise, we won't have urban traffic control. Urban traffic control isn't about.
Is he not here, John?
Okay, signs. Are you needing a lift home? Yeah.
No, we're waiting for Robert.
To come and lock up.
Yeah.
So it's not all about road safety, but what doesn't help is a lot of the decision matrices are based on that. So they basically say, I said, we need to move away from this, especially if it's got nothing to do with road safety. Putting it through a road safety scoring matrix is bonkers, right? So you might say, to deal with congestion, we need to do this scheme. And the first thing they say is, how many killed and serious injuries were there? Well, there's been none, but there's been massive tailbacks. Yeah, but there's no killed and serious, so that counts as 0.
But I understand where they're coming from. Like with here, I said to you the last time we were talking about this. This sort of junction here where the local people are saying it's dangerous, there is just no statistics that bear that out.
Yeah.
Further down, that is dangerous, but not there.
So what I said was, there's different answers. So maybe what they do is put the speed counts out, and then they can report back to some speed counts.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the volume.
Exactly.
This is the averages.
Okay,
so to work from.
Yeah, exactly.
So I said, she made a big assumption without even talking.
Yeah. Hi, Robert. You all right? Okay. Nice to see you.
Okay, see you later.
Are you working tomorrow, Joe?
Yeah. I'm working tomorrow.
Are you going from home or going to the office? Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I've got planning. I've got planning to do.
But it was really frustrating, and honestly, I've got to say, I will wound up. But if you ever meet Paul White, you will find him to be
a reasonable chap, and he was angry and pissed off.
Yeah, it would be the best way to put it. And when I said to Jackie, I said, Paul were riled, and she was like, oh, yeah, exactly. I can rattle, and I don't say I don't throw rattle out for fun, right?
No.
But I think when Paul throws rattle out, you should get a good idea that you've gone too far. And even Mark in the meeting kind of like, well, let's put a lid on that now for now, because there was a danger of them two saying something that wouldn't have been helpful.
Yeah.
Right. See you later, Jen. But,
Anyway, good to see you, Councillor. Yeah. I'll talk to the committee about that and try and get something done.
Okay, sorry. So just to say, there's different ways of taking it forward. So speed counts might be one, having an engineer out might be one. It depends on what and where and when. But they should be saying what we're going to do about it.
Okay. Cool.
But that decision matrix is all about KSI, and I said, if it's not about accidents, that's completely inappropriate matrix to score it on.
Yeah. Okay. See ya.